which I will delete after we're done.
And we are live.
Oh.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the Tea Crane. I'm Tia Sosen. With me is Linnea, and we are going to, have a little bit of an enjoyable tea time before we open the store. And we're going to be talking about some recent updates, recent happenings, and of course, it's the new tea harvest season, it's the shincha season. And I've got the first shincha of the year in stock. Usually shincha happens very early on, earlier than now actually, and most stores already start carrying new fresh tea by the end of April, early May, the first days of May. But at the Tea Crane, it's usually a bit later. We work together with producers that have a later harvest because of their elevation, because of the colder climate where they are producing the tea. And so now is the time that for us really the new harvest starts to come in, and the new tea, the first new tea of this year has just come in, and it is our Wild Sencha from Kamo.
Ooh, yay.
And the harvest happened on May 4th. And then, of course, the production had to happen. The producer had to sort of calm down a little bit. And it's a hectic schedule. He's still got to do his kabusecha and his yokuro and his matcha and all that as well. So the sencha comes out first, and the other teas have to be shaded and wait for a while. And then, of course, well, as he's doing all his work, he's harvesting, he's producing, he needs to taste his tea as well, then get ready for the next day. And he's got so much work that, of course, when I ask him, can you send me the tea immediately when it's done? It's not possible. Mm-hmm. So he sent it to me just a few days ago when he had some spare time in between his harvest schedule. And now here we have it. We're getting ready to pack it, and it's already available from the store, the 2020 harvest from our farmer in Kamo, Tokuya Yamazaki. He's is ready, and we are going to taste it.
All right.
And on top of that, actually, I'll just show you the leaf, and you can have a sniff of that. But I also introduced that we've been to a hand picking of some native tea trees, some native tea bushes in Ujidawara. And I made a video about it that you can check out on the YouTube channel. We've been picking, we've done a little experiment, and we've also gone around Ujidawara to have a look at the birthplace of sencha, because that's really where Nagatani Soen invented the method for production of sencha. So we had a splendid afternoon, I would say. Well, not really an afternoon, it was a full day.
Yeah.
It was a full day.
It was a nice day, nice weather. It was, very interesting.
Yeah. So join us in that video, go have a look. And while I brew the tea, please share us some, tell us a bit about that day that we had, and share us some of those experiences.
Yep. Right. Well, so I've really only done a lot of harvesting by machines back when I was volunteering at the tea farm last year. And I did a little bit of hand picking, but it really wasn't that much. It was maybe just like a morning or so. So this was an interesting experience because it was all hand picking, first of all. And it's kind of an interesting experience having to be more mindful about which leaves you pick and which ones you leave, and why that is. Why do we pick this leaf and not this leaf? So that was a really interesting experience for me. And also that it was not like you usually see in pictures. The tea bushes are all kind of in rows, and the machine really really harvests the leaves very uniformly kind of across the top. So they end up in these like really neat lined up hedges, and they look really neat and orderly. But the ones here were more bushes. They weren't harvested
like individual.
Yeah, individual. They weren't
shrubs, kind of.
They weren't, cut off into hedges. They really were just bushes like you would see outside, like along the street, or not what you would usually imagine a tea garden to look like.
Yeah, if you didn't know what a tea bush would look like, then probably if you walked by it, you wouldn't know, it
yeah.
was a tea tree.
That is one of the things that I.
And you said
was
you
a
had to
little
be more
surprised
mindful about which leaf to pick and which leaf to leave. How did we go about that? Which leaves did you leave and which leaves did you pick?
Let's see, I'm not sure if I got all of the details. I think the farmer had quite a few pieces of advice about it. I mostly, once I got started, I kind of more focused on just the softer leaves and the ones that still looked green and healthy, because some of them looked like they were wilting a little bit, so they were very soft, but I usually left those. Some of them were just really, really tough, so I obviously left those as well.
This was quite an sort of non-conventional occasion, though, because it's only the third year after he cut back the garden,
Right.
which means that the tea bushes are producing fresh leaves, but the yield is not that very great yet. Usually takes about 5 years for a good yield. So this was the first time that we were going to try to produce some leaf of it, and he mainly wanted to use this opportunity to get people to harvest with him, so that you could have an initial idea of what this tea garden produces for tea. And
right, since it's native grown, you don't really have a standard, like Yabukita might taste like this, or another cultivar might taste like this.
So he wasn't really peculiar about the yield. He was more interested in getting the best, the tips only, the freshest leaves only. And so he was giving more advice on only take those leaves behind. But otherwise, if you go to a tea region like Mandokoro, for example, which we will probably also be doing, they'll try to get everything off. Everything that is shoots after spring. So, I mean, you can see on the branch too that a part is brownish, and then out of that comes a green part. And everything that's on the green part basically needs to be harvested, needs to be picked. So this was a little bit different than what you would have usually. But I think we did get a good understanding of which the freshest leaves are, which the youngest leaves are. And it was a little bit luxurious picking too. I mean, it was very
laid back.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people there. I wasn't expecting so many people.
Yeah, more than 20, I think it was.
Yeah. And they were all kind of just having a good time and talking. There were some kids there running around.
And there were a lot of people that also went around and visited the area. There was a hand rolling demonstration at the venue where we had lunch.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yep.
So when I was actually compiling the video, I felt that sequence-wise, it just built up perfectly, although it was non-intentional.
That's true.
Because we were picking, then we had the picked leaf. We drank it just to see if it is possible to produce tea from freshly picked, unprocessed leaf. Well, we had our conclusions about that. And of course, we would prefer processed tea. And then we went for lunch where there was a guy hand rolling tea. We then visited the house where the inventor of the hand rolling method was born, and where he had his setup to produce tea. And so we
really progressed.
We really progressed to all the steps. It was,
now that you mention it, it was a good good flow.
Good sequence. That would actually be a great tour for if tourism returns.
Yeah, if somebody ends up going to Ujidawara, I would be the first tour guide to go there.
So this is the fresh sencha, the wild sencha from Kamo. It's available on the homepage already, so you can place your orders, and it's really fresh, really
Yeah.
green, vegetal, but nothing like too much bitterness. There's some sweetness in it. It's a little oily, but not very much. It
Yeah,
just,
very well balanced.
it's very nice. It's very light too.
Yeah.
It's not that it has an immense impact as to flavor. It's just
Very well.
nice
well-rounded.
aroma that just travels through all holes in the nose and the face and
Full body experience.
comes out of your eyes.
Now, this
Well,
tea is this
have a look at the
feels
color. Can you bring the color a bit closer to the camera lens? There you go.
here. This field is really interesting, or this farm is one of my favorites just because of how unique it is. It's just totally wild. There's not a lot of, or he does really the bare minimum of cultivating.
Yeah,
Maintenance on the fields.
he actually leaves the weeds to grow unless they really start to overgrow and become harmful for the garden. He lets the weeds grow, which is usually a job that most tea farmers in summer are very busy with because
Yes.
they need to pull out all the weeds. It's just
So
a
that
whole
the machine
summer
doesn't
of
get
pulling
'em.
weeds. And what he does is he says, I leave the weeds growing because in this environment, there is a balance of nutrients in the soil. And when that balance sort of starts to tilt towards the right or the left, then that creates an imbalance. And weeds grow there to reset that balance. Once, well, say for example, the soil becomes a bit insufficient in a certain component, then there is weed A that grows on it that
Sort of balances the soil back out.
well, it makes more sense if I put it this way. There is an amount of nutrients in the soil that is too much. The weed grows on the soil and absorbs that. It balances the amount of nutrients in the soil again, and that is how the tea bush can grow
Really thrive.
and thrive.
Yeah, I've heard.
When the weeds grow further, then, if there's another component that needs to be arranged, then there's different weeds. He says that in the same month, it's not always the same weeds that grow on his gardens. It's also different. So that's how the soil is regulated. And then when the weeds grow and he just lets them wither, they go back to the soil and they become again a type of nourishment that reestablishes another kind of balance again.
Very natural sort of fertilizer.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard of that kind of companion planting, I think it's called, in gardening, where if you plant certain plants together, they kind of really help each other out in terms of soil and etc.
Yeah, no, that's true. And so he does that with his
the weeds.
with his weeds. And if you look at nature itself, there's always in one place there are different things growing. There are weeds, there are trees, there are bushes, there are different types of trees. There's like a whole mixture of things growing in the same place. But if you look at a tea garden, it's just a tea bush. And if you look at most conventional tea gardens, there's nothing else growing there, just because it's all killed off. So that really makes those tea trees dependent on artificial nourishment. And of course, he wants to, well, avoid that. Yes.
Yes. Well, and not only is it, I personally, not only do I think it's interesting because of that sort of method of fertilizing, if you will, but especially with teas such as gyokuro or matcha, they really have a lot of kind of requirements to be considered, gyokuro or matcha versus kabusecha or sencha. So I think people usually have this image of them being like really, really strictly maintained, those gardens, and it's just really contradictory to that kind of a standard image of matcha and gyokuro, especially. To just, he still meets all of those requirements and he does all of that. He does the shading, but really everything else is just completely natural.
Yeah, and he doesn't add any artificial nourishment, no fertilizer to it. It's just all wild and natural. And for the people that have drunk my Kamo matcha, it's absolutely wild. It's absolutely refreshing too. It's got some bitterness to it, but it's definitely not any of that rich umami flavor that you'd expect. And that makes it so interesting because by drinking those teas, by drinking his gyokuro, by drinking his kabusecha, by drinking his sencha, and also the matcha, you get an understanding for if we let tea grow,
this is what it'll turn out like.
This is what it will turn out like.
This is what it's supposed to.
It's your default, this is natural tea flavor. And anything that is different from that really is added. And that makes it interesting because you can use that sort of as your standard measurement.
If you want to add, if you want your final product to be to have a stronger umami flavor or a stronger certain flavor, then you can adjust it accordingly. Adjust your cultivating, your maintenance, and your processing.
Right. You could do that.
Yeah, if you.
Which most farmers are actually doing. So it's good to see that he's going the other direction by not doing that.
By not doing that.
If he's not, well, and then actually more producers could also realize that we don't have to fertilize. We can make something interesting, and
it'll still be a really good tea.
It's one of the approaches that I discuss in my book as well, which is let tea be tea. The producer either says, I have a tea bush, but I don't like it. It needs to change for me to like it. It's like a very common approach that people also have towards other people. You need to change before I'm going to like you. Terrible. But a lot of producers do that to their tea trees as well. They say, you have to grow more like this. So I'm going to feed you that. And they push it in a certain direction that is not necessarily good for the tea tree. It's like pushing children in a certain direction that they don't want to go. They'll start to protest. They get stressed. And I mean, there's all these welfare diseases that we're suffering right now because of how we're just being molded and put into a frame that we don't feel we fit into it, and so we have all these mental issues. So it's the same with the tea bushes, and it causes stress. So there's another type of tea farmer, most of the tea farmers that I like to work with, and they say these tea trees, they have a certain appeal, they have a certain capacity. We are just going to extract that. We let the tea grow the way it's supposed to grow. We create the environment around it so that it can flourish. And then once the leaf is produced, we'll see what it has given us. And then we guide that leaf through the processing, which is basically just extracting the saps, extracting the moisture from the leaf, drying it, and making it drink ready. There's nothing really added to it. And so what they do is really to recognize the inherent traits of the tea tree itself. So if you would apply that to children again, you'd say, well, it's a bit like Steiner education.
Steiner education.
It's very free. It's like we create the environment for you to do whatever you need to do in, and we will protect you doing what you need to do. We're not going to say you have to do this or that. No, you're free. You express yourself. You cultivate your imagination, your creativity, and then, of course, well, that will flourish. Yeah. So it's that type of farming that that I like to look at, and he's definitely he has combined both. Actually, on the matcha tin, I've written in English the slogan for the children of the future. The matcha tin of the Kamo matcha, and that's basically his attitude. He treats his tea trees the same way as he treats his children, and that's also what he tells me.
That's adorable.
His children, if you look at them, they're absolutely free. I mean, they run around on their zori, and they're just doing all kinds of things, and he just lets them be. It's just like, you do what you need to do. You grow, and you will grow, and if you let them free, they will grow up anyways. If you do anything to them, or you don't do anything to them, they'll grow up. So that's his approach. Yeah.
When we were into Ujitawara, we talked to a couple of different, both the farmer of the tea farm fields that we were picking, and another one as well. And I think they kind of said a similar thing about this year's particular harvest and how that has come out.
Oh, yes.
Depending on the weather. And this one is, I think it does kind of reflect that. It's a very it's a very light flavor.
You could look at it as a not as much as a soap bubble really, but you have a lighter inner core, which is, so the impact really is not as, the body is not as heavy, but the outer shell is quite prominent.
Yeah.
And I think what you're referring to is that this year, because the harvest, I mean, I've had other producers also, they said the same thing. Last year, about 60% of the first harvest was destroyed because of the frost. The year before, 25% of the harvest was destroyed, or somewhat around that number, because of the frost. So we had 2 years with a lot of frost damage. And this year we didn't have any frost damage at all. So everyone is expecting it to be very good. But on the other hand, there was also a lot of temperature difference. So it got warmer, the leaves started to grow, then it got colder, it stopped growing, and it got warmer again, and it sort of stayed on average, and then it went up and down. And so the leaf itself was stopping and starting and stopping and starting, and that caused it to not be able to take up as much nourishment really as it would otherwise. But it did turn out in a good aroma, is what they say. And the yield is also that the leaf didn't grow as big as it would grow usually, because of that starting and stopping and starting and stopping. So on average, what they expect this year's harvest to be is that it's not going to be as thick as to flavor, not as flavorful, but that we are going to have an enjoyable range of aromas. And I think this tea definitely is an image of that. I'm going to brew it again for a third infusion.
Still very full-bodied on that second one too.
Yeah, don't take these words too heavily. I mean, it's still very intense.
Oh yes, yeah. It's not a.
You can feel really it's a shincha.
Yes.
It has some power in this area here.
Yes, it's not. It's not like I know I've definitely drunk some teas, especially kabusecha and gyokuro, where you really you can't drink too much of it. You can't drink it too quickly because it's just so intense. It's definitely not like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very, it's there. You notice it. It's
Yeah,
not just something that you drink.
It's potent in another area.
Yes, yeah.
And it's still a little bit stingy. I mean, it's only 8 days since the harvest, so it's very, very fresh.
New.
And you can feel it's very stingy still. There's some spikes going through the upper parts of the mouth. You can feel it settle in here. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a good shincha.
It is. And
let's have a look at this brew here.
We mentioned also mandokoro, which is another opportunity for picking shincha that we might have in, I think it's about 2 weeks.
So yes, I go to Mandokoro every year. I have quite a few videos on Mandokoro as well. So if you are interested to visit the area, then have a look at the YouTube channel again. Look for Mandokoro. And again, that is coming up later this month as well. Yeah, I think in 2 weeks.
Right. And that one, like you said, we've mentioned it before, but just a quick overview of what that kind of field is unique, or what is unique about that region, is that they are, again, very, it's kind of the way tea was processed 100 years ago, I think. So what do you say?
There's a lot about that area. I would say Mandokoro is the only region in Japan that still produces tea as it was produced 100 years ago. And with that, I'm mainly focused then on the cultivation, because most of the conventional teas, it's the cultivation that changes the flavor of the tea. So the more you fertilize, the more you make do things to the soil and the tea trees and everything. So what they have in Mandokoro is they don't use anything that is not natural, that is chemical, etc. So no pesticides, no chemicals, no artificial fertilizer. The only thing that they use for fertilization is fallen leaves and branches that they get from the neighboring forests, and a little bit of the remains of coal seed that was used to make canola oil.
Really?
And that is a good source of nourishment. And there's a factory in the vicinity of, not too far from Mandokoro, so they use it because it's local.
So they also have a canola oil region industry nearby? Or they
I have no idea. I have no idea about canola oil.
That's the first time I'm hearing about it. Interesting.
So they use that. The trees are absolutely natural. They're seed grown, and their roots can go back to over 300 years.
Wow.
The oldest tea tree that is still there is 300 years old. And most of the other trees, the shrubs that they really harvest, are cut back down to the base about 10 centimeters above the ground to, keep the branches and the leaf fresh. But they leave the root. And because they're seed grown, the root digs deep into the soil all the way down to the deepest layers. And that is where it gets its nourishment and energy from. And I mean, if you have a root that has been digging for hundreds of years,
they found the best spots.
They have gotten to some amazing sources of energy that go, I don't know how many years, but hundreds of millions of, say millions of years back. And we get to drink that.
When you put it like that, that's incredible.
That is incredible. And so what they do is they harvest it only by hand. Everything's hand picking. There's some, old ladies, mostly in their 70s, 80s, 90s, that harvest the tea trees, and they are amazingly vital. They're more alive than most people in the city. they shine.
That's
They give light.
Hmm.
Very beautiful human beings.
Hmm.
And I mean, if you live in an area like that and you live your life that way and you work with nature in such a way, then I mean,
Really
nature
tap
takes
into
care
it.
of you too.
Hmm.
And Mandokuro is certainly a place that illustrates that.
I'm
So
looking forward. I hope we. Hopefully, it won't. The weather will hold. We'll be able to go up. Well,
and then I'll be
not
able
this
to make
weather.
some more videos again and share that as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
So
Well, whether or not we go, you have teas from Mandokuro in your kind of permanent selection.
and I will also
hope.
have this year's tea for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
I might actually also get a gyokuro from Mandokuro,
Mm.
which is also again the same as the wild gyokuro, which is not fertilized and made into anything, but just the native tea trees that grow there, and they are shaded with natural reed blinds.
Ooh, okay. So we'll
Put
see
up
that too.
on, and yes, we will be able to see that
I
if you
think
go.
that'll be my first time seeing actual
Reed
reed
blinds?
Yeah, I always see the cheesecloth ones.
Yeah. They don't do it that very often anymore, but in Mandokuro, of course, the idea is to do
Right.
everything
That's true.
natural.
Mhm.
So they'll have a tea garden there with wooden poles, a wooden structure that they have to put up every year again. Then roll the reed blinds out over that,
Mm.
and the tea trees under it, they are usually made into gyokuro.
Mm. Right. Well, I hope we get to go.
We will go.
We will
Although
go.
we have
It will
to
be
figure
nice
out
weather.
some logistics, and well, we might be camping, which is also nice.
If the weather doesn't get too
Yep.
rainy, like it is today.
It is rainy.
It is
Yeah,
rainy.
it is rainy.
Starting to get into rainy season here. Any questions? Any comments?
Yeah.
All right.
Isn't it called dento hon when it's covered with reeds?
Dento.
It's well, dento. Well, dento is traditional, and hon is I think short what you use for honzu, which is the reed blinds, and that is the way they would call it in in Japanese.
Hon. What is the character for hon? Not book. Do you happen to know? I don't know if you know. What is the character for hon? Or honzu? Is it one that is common? It's not.
No, it's not very common. It's very
I
uncommon.
probably don't know it then.
It's well, basically the character for reed blind.
Okay, yeah, I don't know that one. So.
Yes. And a tip for everyone: bring a bug net for your heads if you go. Ooh. Of course.
Oh.
A net or a hat will always have something. So
there we did see make some new friends in the tea plants in Ujitawara.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about the organic gardens. You always have a lot of friends, a lot of bugs, spiders.
Even in non-organic gardens, I saw quite a few spiders.
It depends on when they spray too.
Yeah, I don't know the schedule at that other place, but they would have their webs kind of all over and across the tea bushes, and if it was kind of a moist day, especially in the
it's pretty though.
Yeah, and the water would collect on the spider webs. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Not so fun to if you had to reach through and pick a weed or something. It was not very fun to reach through those spider webs, but they were nice to look at.
Well, it comes with the job. It comes with the organic gardens, and the more bugs that you see on the tea trees, the more it means
it's good.
Yeah, of being a good organic tea. So, all right, I think we're soon going to have to call it off. It was again a nice chat. Of course, 2 p.m. here in Japan is always the time that I open my doors. So I'm going to have to open the doors here too. Again, if you are interested in getting some of the first harvest of this year, the first flush, the first fresh shincha, then our Wild Sencha is available on the homepage right now. You can get that already. And the link is also in the description of the video, so I put that in there, so it's easy for you to find. Get some of our 2020 tea, and soon more teas will be following as well. So I'll be adding those too. Stay tuned. Keep brewing. May I ask a question? Well, yes, I'll stay around for 2 more minutes, and please do ask your question.
Yes, please. We love getting questions. And as always, if you ever have any questions or feedback about the lives, if you have a certain time zone or a certain time period, time slot that works better for you, we always like to have feedback about the lives and anything else on our Instagram. And any questions as well. And that's where we post the updates about the next week's chat.
We'll keep that one for next time.
Okay.
Would you please discuss fire? I mean, that's a huge topic. So I don't think we're going to have enough time to talk about fire. I have a few stories that I can share about which types of heat work better, like charcoal or wood fire or electric. A few farmers also work with different types of heat, like gas or electric or wood fire. So there's a few things that I can share about that, but I'll keep that for another time. And today we'll wrap up right here. So thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for your questions and for the suggestions. And keep brewing. It's time to start drinking more tea. Bye-bye.